Welcome to the Mystery and History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. They were called giants, record holders, attractions, athletes, and even living legends. But behind heights that came close to or went beyond 8 feet 2 inches, there were real people trying to study, work, travel, and survive in a world that was never built for them. Some joined the circus, others dominated courts and rings, while many faced pain, constant stares, and a fame they did not always choose. In this video, you will discover the real stories of men and women who pushed the limits of the human body with lives just as impressive as their measurements. And stay until the end, because some of these giants did not become famous only for their height, but for what they did when the whole world could only look at their size. Robert Pershing Wadlow's life crossed the 20th century as a rare case where fame, medicine, and everyday life mixed from a very early age. He was born on February 22, 1918, in Alton, Illinois, with a normal weight for a baby, but his fast growth soon caught the attention of his family and doctors. The condition was linked to enlargement of the pituitary gland, which caused too much growth hormone to be produced, making Robert keep growing until his final days. Measured on June 27, 1940, he reached 8 feet 11 inches tall, a mark recognized as the tallest ever recorded with reliable proof. Despite his physical difficulties, he studied, joined the Boy Scouts, entered college with an interest in law, and tried to keep a dignified image before public curiosity. In 1936, he began appearing with the Ringling Brothers Circus, but avoided being treated as a sideshow act, preferring to appear as a main attraction. Later, he traveled with the International Shoe Company, receiving custom-made shoes and turning his presence into advertising work. Robert died on July 15, 1940, in Manistee, Michigan, after an infection caused by a poorly fitted brace, leaving behind a story marked less by size and more by the calm way he faced a life watched by crowds. Among the most recognized names in 20th century professional wrestling, Andrei René Roussimoff built a life that went beyond sports and entered popular culture. He was born on May 19, 1946, in Coulommiers, France, and grew up in the small community of Moulins, although he was often announced in the ring as being from Grenoble, a common promotional tactic in wrestling. His height was promoted as 7 feet 4 inches, a result linked to acromegaly and gigantism, conditions caused by too much growth hormone that turned simple tasks into daily challenges from his youth. While still young, Andre left rural life and found in wrestling a form of work, public identity, and independence, moving through circuits in Europe, Japan, and Canada before being brought into the North American scene. Starting in the 1970s, he became a central attraction for world wrestling entertainment, known as the Eighth Wonder of the World, facing names like Hulk Hogan and helping expand the global reach of sports entertainment. Outside the ring, he gained a new dimension by playing Fezzik in The Princess Bride in 1987, a role that showed a sweeter and more human image to the general public. Despite his fame, he lived with pain, physical limits, difficult travel, and constant attention while keeping a presence marked by kindness and privacy. Andre died on January 28, 1993, in Paris, although some popular records cite the 27th. And his story remains that of someone who turned a rare condition into a career, cultural presence, and warm public memory. Rumeysa Gelgi's story gained worldwide attention not through stage shows, but through the way she turned a rare condition into public presence, work, and advocacy for inclusion. She was born on January 1, 1997, in Turkey, with public records linking her origins to the Karabakh region and her childhood to Safranbolu, although some sources list only the country of birth. Since infancy, she showed signs of Weaver syndrome, a rare genetic condition linked to rapid growth, skeletal differences, muscle weakness, and mobility challenges. In 2014, Guinness World Records recognized her as the tallest teenager in the world, and in 2021, she was recorded as the tallest living woman at about 7 feet 1 inch, officially measured at 84.7 inches. Because of physical limitations, she uses a wheelchair most of the time and a walker for short distances, and she studied at home before finishing high school. Rumesa also built a career as a web developer and advocate for rare disease awareness, using her visibility to speak about accessibility and respect. In 2022, she took her first airplane trip with support from Turkish Airlines, which adjusted seats to allow the journey between Istanbul and San Francisco. Her life story is still ongoing, showing how public attention can be used not only to impress, but to expand conversations about difference, independence, and dignity. In 20th century European basketball, Uljana Larionovna Semyonova became a presence almost impossible to separate from the history of the Soviet national team and Latvian sports. She was born on March 9th, 1952, with more detailed records placing her birth in Zarasai, Lithuania, while her family lived in the Madumi area, linked to the Daugavpils district in Latvia. From a young age, her unusual height drew attention, and sports sources list measurements ranging from 6 feet 10 inches to 7 feet, a common difference in older athlete profiles. Invited to train in Riga while still a teenager, she turned her physical size into skill, discipline, and control near the basket, playing for decades with TTT Riga. For the Soviet Union, she won Olympic gold in 1976 and 1980, 3 world titles, and 10 European championships in an international career marked by no losses in official competitions. Although many popular sources connect her height to acromegaly, the main sports records mostly highlight her height and do not widely detail a medical diagnosis. After the court, she helped veteran athletes through the Latvian Olympic Social Fund, keeping influence beyond the game. Uljana died on January 8, 2026, in Riga at age 73, leaving a career that joined physical strength, competitive talent, and major national recognition. In rural Turkey, Sultan Kozan went from a quiet country life to one of the most recognized human figures of the 21st century because of an extremely rare condition. He was born on December 10, 1982, in the Mardin region into a family of average height and grew normally until about age 10, when his body began developing in an unusual way. The case was linked to pituitary gigantism, caused by too much growth hormone connected to a tumor in the pituitary gland, a condition that also brought pain, mobility limits, and daily difficulties. Before fame, he worked as a farmer and was even noticed in basketball, including a connection to Galatasaray, but his height and physical problems kept that path from moving forward. In 2009, Guinness World Records recognized him as the tallest living man, at first with a height of 8 feet 1 inch, and on February 8, 2011, he was officially measured in Ankara at 8 feet 3 inches. Public attention opened doors to travel, interviews, and international meetings, but it also exposed challenges that are simple for most people, such as finding proper clothes, shoes, furniture, and transportation. In 2010, he received treatment at the University of Virginia with medicine and gamma knife radiosurgery, a procedure that helped control hormone production and stop his growth. His story is still unfolding, marked not only by the record, but by constant adaptation to a world made for much smaller bodies. In a small community in Hunan Province, China, Zheng Jinlia became one of the most unusual stories ever recorded about human growth in the 20th century. She was born on June 26, 1964, in Yujiang, an area linked in records to the former Bright Moon Commune, and began growing unusually during the first months of life. Before turning 4, she already stood about 5 feet 1 inch tall, and by age 13, she was over 7 feet 1 inch, numbers that brought medical and documentary attention to her case. Her final verified height was 8 feet 1 inch, making her the only woman recognized by Guinness World Records for officially passing the 8-foot mark. Unlike many names tied to public shows, Zheng did not have a well-documented circus or entertainment career. Her fame came mostly through medical records, news reports, and the impact of living with a rare condition in a rural area. She also faced scoliosis and diabetes, problems that made travel, clothing, furniture, and daily care much more difficult. Described in accounts as reserved, close to her family, and connected to reading, she lived with a fame that seemed to come more from other people's curiosity than from her own choice. Zheng died on February 13, 1982, still very young, leaving a historical record that reveals not only extraordinary height, but also the limits, adjustments, and silences of a life watched by the world. Sandra Elaine Allen became known worldwide as Sandy Allen, the name used in news reports, record books, and public appearances throughout the 20th century. She was born on June 18, 1955, in Chicago, Illinois, but grew up in Shelbyville, Indiana, where her unusual height made daily life increasingly challenging. Her growth was linked to acromegaly gigantism, caused by a tumor in the pituitary gland that triggered too much growth hormone. Recognized by Guinness World Records as the tallest woman in the world in her time, Sandy reached about 7 feet 7 inches, a measurement that sparked enormous public curiosity. In her youth, she faced isolation, constant stares, and trouble finding clothes, furniture, and adapted spaces. In 1977, she had surgery to stop her growth and later used her public attention in interviews, television, and messages about accepting differences. She also appeared in productions such as Casanova and Sideshow, but she wanted to be seen beyond the record. Sandy died on August 13, 2008, in Shelbyville, leaving a life story marked by resilience, sensitivity, and dignity. Yao Ming became one of the great symbols of basketball's international growth in the 21st century, bringing the National Basketball Association closer to Chinese audiences on an unprecedented scale. He was born on September 12, 1980, in Shanghai, China, to parents connected to basketball, and from early on drew attention for being far taller than average. At 7 feet 6 inches, he developed with the Shanghai Sharks, the team where he stood out before being chosen by the Houston Rockets as the first overall selection in the 2002 National Basketball Association draft. Unlike many historical giants, there is no reliable record that his height is linked to acromegaly or gigantism, and it is generally presented as an exceptional physical trait within an already tall family. In the National Basketball Association, he became an 8-time All-Star, was selected to all National Basketball Association teams, and helped the Houston Rockets regain relevance in the 2000s, although foot and leg injuries shortened his career. With the Chinese national team, he competed in the Olympic Games of 2000, 2004, and 2008, becoming a national figure and a sports link between China and the United States. After retiring in 2011, he entered the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2016 and took leadership roles in Chinese basketball, including the presidency of the Chinese Basketball Association between 2017 and 2024. His path shows how an extraordinary physical presence could become a cultural, diplomatic, and athletic impact far beyond the court. Brahim Takiullah's life gained international attention in the 21st century by bringing together a rare medical condition, physical records, and a routine shaped by constant adaptation. Born on January 26, 1982, in Guelmim in southern Morocco, he grew up in a simple setting and only later had his case investigated, after rapid growth in adolescence drew attention for its speed and unusual proportions. Tests pointed to acromegaly, linked to too much growth hormone caused by a tumor in the pituitary gland, a condition that affected his height and also brought practical daily difficulties. At about 8 feet 1 inch tall, Brahim came to be listed among the tallest living men in the world. On October 12, 2011, Guinness World Records confirmed that he had the largest feet in the world among living people at that time, measuring 15 inches on the left and 14.8 inches on the right. Before becoming internationally known, he studied geography and later went to Paris in search of medical follow-up and better treatment conditions. Public attention opened space for interviews, appearances, and worldwide recognition, but it also exposed constant obstacles, such as finding suitable shoes, clothes, transportation, and housing. His story remains connected not only to the extraordinary size of his body, but to the way he faced with dignity the limits imposed by a world poorly prepared for people with extreme height. Leonid Stepanovich Stadnik, often spelled Leonid Stadnik in international sources, was a Ukrainian whose fame came from a condition he never seemed to seek. He was born on August 5, 1970, in the Zhytomyr region, then part of Soviet Ukraine, and lived mainly in the village of Podolyansy in a rural routine with his family. His unusual growth was linked to problems with the pituitary gland, with reports mentioning brain surgery and too much growth hormone production. In 2007, Guinness World Records announced him as the tallest living man at 8 feet 5 inches, but the title became controversial because he refused new official measurements. Trained as a veterinarian, he had to leave the work as walking, using transportation, finding clothes, and living in ordinary spaces became difficult tasks. Unlike many giants connected to public appearances, Leonid avoided exposure and said he only wanted a normal life. He died on August 24, 2014 at age 44 after a brain hemorrhage, leaving a private story marked by the fight for dignity away from international curiosity. In 19th century Canada, Edward Beaupré became known as the Giant of Willow Bunch, a nickname tied to the small community where he grew up in what is now Saskatchewan. He was born on January 9, 1881, in Willow Bunch, the son of Gaspard Beaupré and Florestine Pichet, a Métis woman, and he was the oldest of 20 siblings. His growth was normal in childhood, but it sped up after age 7. By 17, he stood about 7 feet 1 inch tall. The case is described as pituitary gigantism, and his final height is usually recorded between 8 feet 3 inches and 8 feet 3 1/2 inches. Before fame, he tried to follow ranch life and was a skilled horseman, but his own size made that almost impossible. He then moved through fairs and circuses, bending iron bars, lifting horses, and facing Louis Cyr in Montreal on March 25, 1901. Later, he worked with the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Weakened by tuberculosis, he died on July 3, 1904, at age 23, leaving a path marked by talent, public exploitation, and a return to Willow Bunch decades later. Paul Sturgis became known in the 21st century as one of the tallest basketball players ever recorded, bringing together sports, entertainment, and a presence hard to ignore. He was born on November 25, 1987, in Loughborough, England, and grew up liking soccer before finding in basketball a path better suited to his unusual height. In his teenage years, he went through rapid growth, but news sources report that medical exams did not identify a specific genetic disorder, so his height should not automatically be linked to acromegaly or gigantism without confirmation. Officially measured in London on November 14, 2011, he reached 7 feet 7.26 inches, a mark tied to recognition from Guinness World Records. After playing college basketball in the United States for Mountain State University, he joined the Harlem Globetrotters in 2011, receiving the ironic nickname Tiny. He also played for the Texas Legends, a National Basketball Association Development League team connected to the Dallas Mavericks, and for the Cheshire Phoenix in the United Kingdom. Fame brought travel, performances, and appearances in productions such as Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, but also practical challenges with spaces, transportation, and expectations about his body. Today, his story shows how extreme height can be turned into a career, communication, and inspiration for children and young people. Vikas Kumar Uppal, also known as Vicky Uppal, became a figure of major public curiosity in India because of his unusual height and the uncommon records about his life. He was born on January 1, 1986, in Rohtak in the state of Haryana, and came to be cited by the Indian press as the tallest man in the country. In 2004, reports described him as about 8 feet 3 inches tall and still growing, while later sources mentioned 8 feet 10 inches or 8 feet 10 and 1/2 inches, numbers that remain without official confirmation. Guinness World Records did not validate his height, so his place among the tallest men in history should be treated with caution. His medical condition was not widely documented in clinical sources, but reports indicate that he faced problems linked to a brain tumor, possibly connected to extreme growth. Public attention led him to appearances and a part in the Indian film Rang de Basanti, released in 2006. Even with fame, his story remains surrounded by gaps, showing how many cases outside major medical centers were recorded incompletely. Vikas died on June 30, 2007, in Delhi during surgery, leaving a brief path marked by fame, documentary doubts, and the difficulty of living in a body viewed as a rarity. Long before his name appeared on record lists, Väinö Millirina was already known in Finland as a presence impossible to ignore, tall, strong, and surrounded by public curiosity. He was born on February 27, 1909, in Helsinki, when Finland was still a Grand Duchy tied to the Russian Empire, and his growth was linked to acromegaly. Records about his height vary between 8 feet 1 inch and 8 feet 3 inches, but the most often cited measurement is about 8 feet 2 inches. During military service between 1929 and 1930 in the Viipuri Heavy Artillery Regiment, he already stood about 7 feet 5 inches, which fed his reputation as possibly the tallest soldier in history. In the 1930s, he traveled through Europe as a professional wrestler and circus performer, turning his own height into work during a period of strong curiosity about unusual bodies. Later, he served during the Winter War, and in 1946 moved to Järvenpää, where he lived more privately raising chickens. Väinö died on April 13, 1963, in Helsinki, leaving a memory tied not only to a physical record, but also to the search for dignity under public attention. Elhaji Taco Serena Diopfal, known internationally as Taco Fall, became one of the most recognized figures in modern basketball by combining extreme height, charisma, and a path shaped by adaptation. He was born on December 10, 1995, in Dakar, Senegal, and moved to the United States as a teenager, where he developed his game at schools in Texas and Florida. Officially listed by the National Basketball Association at 7 feet 6 inches, he drew attention not only for his height, but also for his wingspan and standing reach, which set historic marks at the 2019 Draft Combine. At the University of Central Florida, he became the school's all-time leader in blocked shots and recorded a historic shooting percentage in college basketball. Even without being selected in the National Basketball Association draft, he signed with the Boston Celtics and quickly became a fan favorite, before also playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers and in international leagues. Unlike other names linked to medical gigantism, there is no reliable public record of a condition such as acromegaly, so his height is usually treated mainly as an exceptional physical trait. Fame brought opportunities, interviews, and global recognition, but also required him to deal with expectations, difficult travel, and the pressure to turn size into athletic performance. His story remains open, showing how an unusual presence can move beyond curiosity and become a symbol of effort, humility, and persistence. Don Albert Kohler entered 20th century history as one of the tallest men ever measured reliably. But his life was marked less by shows and more by work, family, and an adapted routine. He was born on September 1, 1925, in Hardin, Montana, 15 minutes after his twin sister, Donna Marie, and Guinness itself notes that his birth name was Don, not Donald. The family moved early to the American Midwest, passing through Milwaukee before settling on the north side of Chicago, where he grew up and studied. Rapid growth began around age 10, in a condition tied to pituitary gland disorders and gigantism, leading him to reach 8 feet 2 inches at his peak. From 1969 until 1981, he was recognized as the tallest living man in the world, and the 29-inch difference between him and his twin sister also entered the records. Despite fame, Don avoided circus life and preferred promotional appearances, television programs, and public meetings where he could speak directly with people. He worked for many years as a salesman for the Big Joe Forklift Company, using his unusual presence not as simple curiosity, but as a way to create contact and be remembered by customers. In his final years, he faced progressive spinal curvature and heart problems, dying on February 25, 1981, with a memory tied to kindness, good humor, and the effort to live an ordinary life in a body impossible to ignore. Afeez Oladimeji Agoro, publicly known as Afeez Agoro, gained attention in Nigeria for his unusual height and for the way he brought that experience into the media. He was born on December 13, 1975, in Sabo, Yaba, Lagos, and grew up in Akoka, where he studied before pursuing technical training. In his teenage years, he began growing quickly, in a condition later linked to acromegaly, connected to too much growth hormone. At about 7 feet 5 inches, he was presented for years as the tallest man in Nigeria, although recent records suggest that other Nigerians may have surpassed that measurement. Fame brought films, sketches, interviews, and the reality show I Am Agoro, released in 2018 by Linda Ikeji Television. Even while recognized, he spoke about difficult transportation, rare clothing, leg pain, and constant stares. Agoro died on June 14, 2023, in Lagos after a long illness. Reports differ between age 47 and 48. His path remained tied to the effort to turn a rare condition into work and cultural memory. Bernard A. Coyne became one of the most notable figures among cases of extreme growth recorded in the 20th century United States. He was born on July 27, 1897, in western Iowa, with records connected both to Otto and Anthon, communities tied to his family. His condition was described as infantile unicoid gigantism, a term used in older sources to explain the unusual growth that took him beyond 6 feet 7 inches while still young. The most accepted height today is about 8 feet 2 inches, although newspapers of the time cited larger measurements without the same documentary confirmation. Known in advertisements as the Cherokee Giant, Bernard received offers from fair and show business owners, but his family avoided major commercial exploitation. He made only a few public appearances, including the first pitch at a Sioux City Indians game on May 2, 1917. In daily life, he needed clothing, shoes, a bed, and transportation adapted to his size. Bernard died on May 20, 1921, in Anthon at age 23, leaving a brief story surrounded by public curiosity, family protection, and quiet challenges. John William Rogan, called Willie by his family and later remembered as Bud Rogan, became one of the tallest people ever documented in the 19th century. He was born on February 12, 1867, in Sumner County, Tennessee, the son of William and Truelove Rogan, who had lived through slavery and kept a farm between Hendersonville and Gallatin. Rapid growth began around age 13, with pain, migraines, and joint stiffness limiting his mobility. To get around, he used a cart pulled by goats, an image that made him known in Gallatin, where he helped travelers at the train station. In 1899, his height was estimated at about 8 feet 6 inches, but estimates after his death reached 8 feet 9 inches. Even after receiving offers from showmen, he refused almost all exhibitions and accepted only one brief appearance at the Tennessee Centennial Exposition of 1897. Rogan died on September 12, 1905, and his family reportedly protected his burial to keep his body from being treated as a medical curiosity. Albert Johann Kramer crossed the 20th century as one of the best-known cases of gigantism in European entertainment. He was born on June 15, 1897, in Amsterdam, and as a boy already drew attention for his rapid growth, reaching about 6 feet 7 inches by age 7. His height appears in different ways. Many sources use 7 feet 11 inches, while measurements and period advertisements gave different numbers, some enlarged by publicity. On stage, he used the names Jan van Albert and Lofty, appearing in variety theaters, fairs, and international circuits. Alongside Joseph Sepetoni Fessler, a short Swiss performer, he formed a duo based on physical contrast, reflecting an era when body differences were displayed as attractions. Kramer married Wilhelmina Fessler in 1926, worked for decades, and later sought a more stable life in the Netherlands, also connected to Club Lange Mensen. He died on April 4, 1976 in Amsterdam, leaving a story marked by fame, adaptation, and dignity before public attention. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, please use the Super Thanks tool below. Your contribution helps us keep bringing you amazing historical content. Thank you so much for your support, and see you in the next video.